just a couple of minutes, see if a few people hop on, and then we will get going. If you're just now hopping on, feel free to leave a comment, maybe your name, where you're from, what you do. I'd love to see who's here this evening. All right, just a couple more minutes. While we wait before we get started, I'll say I'm getting a little, I've been for Zoom calls and live videos and webinars. I usually at least put on something more than a t-shirt, but we kind of had a late night last night and some unexpected things. And so it's been crazy. I'm super tired. And so it's a t-shirt tonight and yoga pants, but I did accomplish dinner before the call. Last week, my kids were like, are we really not eating until 9 o'clock? And we really didn't, but that's how we're rolling right now. So I am excited to say I have dinner done. Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started, partly because I have terrible wait time, partly because I want to respect your time, those of you that are joining live, and a lot of people watch these after. So if you're unable or you know somebody who's unable to hop on, I try to send these out the day after to everyone who's signed up for the webinar. And then usually a few days later, I get it out to the email list. So tonight, I'm excited to share some ideas for, what am I sharing ideas about? Oh, meaningful learning without technology, right? Really thinking through, what does this look like for our learners that do not have access to technology? And I think that's a very real conversation that we have to start having. It's something that we have to consider because we do have so many learners who, for whatever reason, they may live, we live way out in the country and don't always have great Wi-Fi. We also, I also have 3 kids. And so the access to the number of devices is something that we have to consider as well. And so as we talk through that tonight, I just want to help you maybe consider some ideas that you can do. Oh, Yolanda, you're so sweet. I'm so glad that you are here. I just want to talk through some ideas that you can share with teachers or that you can use yourself with your learners as far as learning this remote learning experience without technology. Look, I'm not going to lie. Technology makes it easier. Technology can open the doors for innovation, but I will say technology does not always equal innovation, right? I've seen many innovative lessons, many innovative learning experiences that did not involve technology at all. So keep that in mind as we're thinking through this, what this can look like. Technology does not have to be involved for it to be meaningful. But the bottom line is that it does still have to be meaningful, regardless of if you're using technology or not. If what we're doing right now for our learners, if what we're providing isn't meaningful, it's a waste of their time and ours. So 2 points that I've really been harping on and trying to just say all the time is that I think we need to focus on 2 things right now. One is we have to find ways to simplify learning. 2 is that we have to help our learners make authentic connections. So finding ways to do those 2 things, simplify learning and help them make those authentic connections, I think is what's going to result in a meaningful experience right now. Every kid, and I said this last week, every kid is in a different situation right now. So to assume that they all have the same amount of support, the same schedule, it's just not the reality. And so we have to be, I think, realistic about that and consider just that we have to lay all the cards on the table here and say, some kids are learning this way, some kids are learning this way. I've got to design experiences that work either way. So that being said, I am going to share my screen with you guys. I wanted to make sure the point was made. It still has to be meaningful. I know that I said that last week, but it's really, really important. As we talk about learning without technology, there's 3 points that I want to make tonight, and hopefully I won't go a full hour. I know you guys have things to do and things to wrap up, and it's late. But that's just when my family kind of winds down and there's some extra time. Learning without technology, 3 things. I think it's important to inspire creativity, communicate learning, and make connections. All three of those pieces are really, really important. And those are the kind of things we're going to go through just as we talk about what this can look like. And I'm going to give you some really practical ideas, but really my goal with these webinars is for it to be a springboard for your own ideas, for you to really see something and go, oh my gosh, I didn't think about this, or I could do this as well. I think that's the goal here, is for us to really collaborate. So if you think of something while I'm sharing, or you've tried one of these ideas, or you've done it a different way, feel free to put that in the chat, because I love hearing from you guys and I love learning from you as well. This works best when it's collaborative, for sure. Okay, so let's start with inspire creativity. You know, one of the ways that we can help our learners learn without technology is asking them to create, make, or design. Now, I think so often, because of our access to technology, oftentimes with this generation, we think about, I know I do, like design a video game or make a website, those types of things. But if they don't have access to technology, there are other ways that they can do that. One of the things that we explored and talked about last week, I think, I've done so many things, I'm trying to think if this was the same deal, but really maker experiences, right? Where they make, create, and design with things that they have around their house. And I think there's some different ways that you can do that. I think that you could think about what you have them learning that week. We're going to look at that plan again, but remember, one of the things that I've really been trying to encourage is for you to design a weekly experience versus daily activities or a checklist for them to complete each day. I just don't feel like that's realistic right now. I feel like giving your kids a weekly experience, providing some flexibility in there, and really focusing on those connections, that's where the real learning is going to occur. So when you're designing that experience and you think about those big ideas you have, are they learning about hurricanes? Are they learning about a specific, maybe it's measurement, maybe it's algebra, whatever it is. Think about some maker experiences, some things they could create, make, or design in order to apply that specific skill, right? How could they use this skill in a making, creating, or designing something? And so it's not a bad idea to give your students, instead of giving them just the packet, to give them task cards. So here are some things that you could do. I think what's important here, if we are giving maker experiences, to really be intentional about considering what they have access to at home. Think about the things that they have around the house. There are so many places. If you just get on Pinterest and look up maker space or maker experiences, you will find tons of things. John Spencer has a great maker experience channel where he gives maker activities and he explains to them how to do that. But remember, if they don't have access to technology, they won't be able to see all of that. So you just developing task cards and sharing simple things that they could do. It might be as simple as creating a paper airplane, right? Think about the physics, think about the measurement, the design that has to happen for that to take place. Thinking about choice boards, right? Asking them to create, make, or design things, but giving them some option. Choice boards are so important right now. Such a great way to send something home and offer some flexibility. So if you or your school are sending home packets, instead of sending home different worksheets, consider creating choice boards where the students can choose from each of the activities and decide what they want to do or what they have the things to do, right? There may be something they can't do because they may not have that at home. I think one of the things we have to consider right now is being collaborative as educators. So when you are creating those choice boards, if you're the RLA, reading language arts teacher, collaborate with the math teacher, collaborate with the science teacher, and create a choice board together. What we don't want, I don't think, is kids getting 7 different choice boards to create or to do different things because they're going to get frustrated. This is a great opportunity for them to make those cross-curricular connections that we've always talked about, right? I have said we can choose to see this as an obstacle or an opportunity. It is an obstacle. We all know that. None of us would choose to be in this situation. But ultimately, could it be an opportunity for them to make those connections? And cross-curricular choice boards great way to do that. So if instead of sending home a packet, what if they got one choice board for the week and they had to maybe complete one in each column? Maybe they had to complete 3 either diagonal across, however you want to do that. But that's much more engaging than getting a really thick packet of assignments that, it's like check, check, check. That's not engaging. You're not going to get to that willingness to invest. It just isn't going to happen that way, unfortunately. I think doing something like spoiler alert, I think I shared this idea last week, but having them do something, make, create, or design something, and then guess what it is that they're having to learn. I think that's a great way to engage learners as well. That could be a maker experience. It could be it could be really anything, but that opportunity to create without technology is important. I say, even if they have access to technology, it's not a bad idea to give them opportunities to really create. So thinking through that, really important. How can you weave creativity in while still giving your students opportunities to make those connections? Hey, Nancy, I'm just seeing your comment. I'm so excited that you're here. Okay, so as we go through thinking about, could you create task cards to send home each week? Could you create choice boards or do something like a spoiler alert where they have to guess what it is that they're going to learn? All great ideas, if I do say so myself, and opportunities for them to really make those important connections. So consider what that might look like and how you could send that home. Those kids that are picking up packets every week or every 2 weeks, if there's a variety, if it looks different each week, that's much more engaging than just picking up the same thing. Is it a little more work? Does it require a little more time? Yes. But could it be more engaging and get them to that willingness to invest? Absolutely. Okay. The next piece that I want to talk about is, sorry, I clicked the wrong button, which I do often, as really communicating their learning. So I think that's the next conversation piece that we have to have is when they don't have access to technology, how do they communicate their learning? How do they share what they're learning? What does that look like? Because one of the things that I have really been focused on and sharing a lot is Flipgrid and how easy it is to use and how much sense it makes in this situation. And I'm still going to say that, and I'm going to say at the end of tonight too, because I'm going to talk to you about how they can use it even if they don't have a ton of technology. But if they absolutely have no access, whether it be Wi-Fi, they don't have a phone, whatever that looks like, we still have to encourage opportunities for our students to communicate what they've learned or what they're learning. So could you send home weekly dinner convo cards? Like, here's an opportunity, parents, for you guys to help your students just while you guys are eating dinner. Can you talk to them about what they're learning? But one of the things that we have to say out loud right now is most parents are not educators. They do not do what we do. They do not think the way that we think, and they shouldn't have to. And so when we think through this and we consider how can we get them involved and how can we make this home to school connection, we have to be really intentional and we have to be really clear about what we're asking them to do. And so I think sending home those dinner conversation cards, hey, here are some questions you can ask your kid over dinner that will help them kind of invest in the learning or that will help them make some important connections. Not a bad idea. I know that that's one of the things that people are saying is that they're eating dinner together a lot more than they ever have. And so that might be something to consider. Charades, right? Have them play a game at home. Ask them to have their student act out their learning. Give them a list of words or vocabulary words that connect to this week's experience and let them play a family game. Let them play charades so that they're able to make those connections. And even if they're just hearing those words, if they're just acting them out, that is meaningful. They are making important connections, and that is what we want. And then finally, the protege effect. So them being able to teach someone else, right? Whether it be, I've been saying this, but whether it be their teddy bears or it's their family or little brother or sister, being able to communicate what they're learning or what they've learned is important, and weaving in those opportunities isn't that difficult. We just have to help parents understand what that looks like and how it can be done. So that being said, those three things I think are really great ways for our students to communicate learning. In the comments, if you can think of some other ways that learners can communicate their learning, feel free to drop those in. I would love to hear how you're doing that and what that looks like as far as students without access to technology. Okay, one more thing that I want to share, and then we're going to look at some other ideas as well, is making connections. And this is where I really want to spend most of our time, because this is where the real learning is going to happen. I think that making authentic connections right now is so important, and there is not any technology that has to be involved in order for that to happen. So authentic connections are more important now than ever before. Again, while students are at home, our learners are at home, it's an opportunity for them to make those important connections between home and school and really get to see learning in action. So taking those things that they've learned at school and connecting them to what is happening at home, or what they're doing at home, or what they have access to at home. So first of all, I want to talk about learning walks. I don't know about you guys, but I have taken more walks in the last few weeks than I think I have ever taken in my life. Anybody else out there doing that? Our poor dog is like, I'm over it. I don't want to go on any more walks. I'm done. But it's just nice to get outside. And just the other day, my husband and I were on a walk, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to see how many learning connections I can make while we're out on this walk. And so that's what I did. As we kind of walked, I started looking for things that could connect to things that a learner might have learned at school. And y'all, oh my gosh. I mean, it was looking at the leaves in the trees and lines of symmetry, looking at the stop signs and noticing the shapes. Oftentimes we go for late night walks and looking at the constellations and the stars. There were so many connections. Even seeing our neighbors, it was trash day the next day, so a lot of our neighbors had their trash out. Great opportunity to talk about recycling. There were just so many connections that I was able to make. By the end of the walk, my husband was like, I'm over it. I don't really need to know about all these connections I like that you think that I do. But I was just so stoked about how many connections that I could make. So think about asking your students to take learning walks with their family. So those could be a couple of different things. It could be, let's think about learning. Hello, let me get my words together. I need a Dr. Pepper. Younger students. So if we're talking about pre-K, kindergarten, they could do a color walk. They could do a shape walk. They could do a number walk. I went on a walk the other day with my 7th grade daughter, and we just had such a great time going through the alphabet, right? Just, hey, let's find some things to start with A, B, C. And of course, is she old enough does she have to do that? No, but was it something to do, and were we able to observe? And sometimes we have a house right up the road from us that they are remodeling, and it's just an older house and it's really cool looking. And so asking them to tell stories about that. Hey, what do you think if those walls could talk, what would they say? And letting them story tell as you walk. All of those are important connections and things that we can help, that our parents can do, that is so much easier than teaching content, because teaching content is not something that most of them are able to do or that they should have to do. Instead, if we can encourage them to make those connections, that's going to be much more beneficial. So learning walks, really, really powerful. Hopefully something that you guys can encourage parents to invest in. Game on. So just board games, playing games at home. I know that a lot of families are having family night, or we're having family night every night, quite frankly. But having game night where you're getting out board games. We have Monopoly, which lasts forever. But if you think about Monopoly and the skills that are used as you play that game, negotiation, you could have somebody be the banker, and that's the one who's counting the money. That's a skill. Counting the spaces, rolling the dice. There are so many learning opportunities in just a board game. So every week in whatever it is that you're sending home, you could have part of that be a game on experience. And you could just encourage the family to play this board game, or there are so many different ways that you can use puzzles, right? So just giving them some options. If you have a puzzle, here's what you can do. If you have this game or this game, here's what you can do. just giving them those different options so that they understand it doesn't have to be a worksheet for them to make those connections. And then finally, scavenger hunts. Scavenger hunts are a great way to encourage learning. And, if I'm honest, are scavenger hunts easier with technology? Absolutely, because they can share what they find, share what they see. But you could even, in whatever it is that you send home, you could send home a piece of paper that explains the scavenger hunt. Maybe you want them to find all of the things around their house that relate to, let's see, maybe in science, they're learning about plants. So you want them to go all around their house and find anything that they can connect to plants. And so when they do that, instead of using technology like Flipgrid or taking pictures, they might draw pictures or they might journal about the things that they find or the things that they see around the house. There's lots of different ways that you can do that without having access to technology. I'm not suggesting that technology doesn't make it easier. Of course it does, but we have students that just don't have that option. And so we have to get creative. We have to be innovative and find ways for them to do that. So making those connections, super important. I just think authentic connections right now are going to give us more bang for our buck than trying to ask our students to complete something or learn something new. It's going to be really difficult right now. I'm not saying it can't be done. I think we're still working on what that looks like. But I think right now focusing on those connections, really, really powerful and not that difficult to do. So in the comments, you guys tell me which one of those learning walks, game-ons, scavenger hunts, which one do you see being most meaningful or having the most impact on your learners? I'm going to pause just a second while you do that. Take a breath and let you guys kind of consider what we've talked about. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag with the comments. I don't always see them as soon as you put them, so I'm going to give it just a second. I've told you guys I have terrible wait time. So I may go ahead and go on and just as your comments pop up, I'll make sure that I share them. But hopefully this isn't a bad sign. Hopefully one of those things are something that you can use or something that you can provide for your learners to make those important connections. Okay, that being said, ticking right along, I want to talk about just a few more options. I said non-digital sort of here, documentation. So that's something we have to consider because I think that's going to be important right now is documentation of their learning and what that looks like. All right, Nancy, I see it. Scavenger hunts would be easier to understand for sure. And the great thing about scavenger hunts is that you can do them in any way. There are so many ways to differentiate that and consider what that can look like for struggling learners to determine what it might look like for gifted learners. There's so many different routes you can go with that. All right. So some options for, here's why I said sort of, because I told you I can't get off of here without talking about Flipgrid. But some ways for them to document their learning, because that is going to be important. I think that's going to come into play soon, is how are they documenting their learning? How do we know what's happening at home? So I think a couple of different things. I think one, they could have a learning journal. I don't think that's a bad idea, where they actually write down their thoughts and share their ideas. I think drawing for younger students or struggling learners, if they're not able to write, drawing pictures of what they're doing, what they're learning, those connections that they're making, that's not a bad idea. And this is all going to make sense in just a second. We talked about creating things after they have learned something, asking them to create something to show that learning, to demonstrate that they can apply it. And I mean, we've been saying this forever, right? If they can apply it, chances are they've reached that deep level of understanding. So application is always such a great way to learn and such a great way to make those connections. Nancy, students or teenagers, outside scavenger hunt is a great idea. I know that, Nancy, I'll tell you, I have teenagers at my home. We have a senior, a sophomore, and a 7th grader, and getting them outside is not always easy. And a couple of days will go by and we'll realize, oh my gosh, we haven't been outside. And so outdoor scavenger hunts, great idea. And Yolanda, learning walks, so powerful. So I'm so glad that that's something that kind of resonated with you. So allowing them to create their own opportunities to document learning. So just telling them, hey, somehow you're going to have to show me what you've learned this week. What does that look like? How are you going to do that? That could be done with older students. Now, some of you are looking at this right now and you're like, QR codes and Flipgrid. Pretty sure that's technology, Andy. You said no technology. Here's why I put these in. Because some of our students, when they say they don't have access to technology, they don't have access to a computer, right? They don't have a Chromebook or they don't have a MacBook or whatever it is, but they do have access. They do have their phones, right? And so thinking about, are there things that they can use their phones for? Absolutely. So if you're going to send home a packet, it's not a bad idea. Or if you're sending home something that they need to access, and you're going to drop that in Google Classroom and you know they're not going to have access to that on their computer, putting a QR code in is not a bad idea because they can just scan that and the video will pop up on their phone. Really easy way for them to access information. So QR codes, super powerful. Just find a QR code generator, Google that, and dropping those into the things that you send home allows them to be able to see whatever they need to see on their phone. Also, Flipgrid. I'm not going to lie, I'm a big fan. It's not a secret. But I think Flipgrid is awesome because it's an app that they can have on their phone. And so if you want them to document their learning on Flipgrid, if they're older and they have access to a device, a phone, they could use Flipgrid to document their learning without having to have a computer, which is very, very cool. So sort of, I had to throw in a little techie, not a ton, but those are just some ideas that I think are important to consider. All right, ticking right along. Tying this into the designing meaningful at-home learning experiences. So if you haven't seen me share this, this is really kind of how I see this playing out. I think giving our students that opportunity to be engaged. And if they're not willing to invest, you can't go any further. We have to get them there first. And so what does that look like? That's that engage piece. So giving them something, it does not have to involve technology, but giving them something that gets them to that willingness to invest. What can they get excited about? How can you get them super stoked about what they're going to be learning? Designing that experience. So then that opportunity to learn. So how am I actually going to deliver the content? How am I going to give them that experience that they are willing to invest in and that will leave an impression? That is important. And then finally, what connections can they make? So that's the empower piece. How can I connect whatever it is that they've learned in this experience to their right now? That's important as well. So engage, experience, and empower. Really how I think you should set up a weekly experience. That makes so much sense to me. I do want to really quickly show you guys how you can, let me add this back. How you can see, let me see if I can get here really quickly without taking too much time. I added some things in here because I actually did this with my daughter. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and I am going to try one more time. Here we go. Okay. So now you guys can see my other screen. I want to show you really quickly just some things that I did for my daughter this week. Again, I set it up in Flipgrid. You wouldn't have to do that. Think about some ways you could do this without using something digital. So you can see she was studying, she was going to have hurricanes coming up. I went and looked at her standards. And so just so you can kind of see what this looked like, the engage piece, I thought, gosh, what better way to get her kind of invested in the learning than to talk about a hurricane that happened right here in the state of Texas. We, not too long ago, went to Galveston. And so I shared a video with her and then just asked her some questions for her to respond to. So that's as easy as it is. That was the engage piece. The experience piece where she was actually going to learn about hurricanes. That example is here. I asked her to watch a Brain Pop video. Brain Pop, by the way, is free for everyone right now because of COVID-19. So definitely something you want to check out and maybe share with your students. And then I asked her to explore one of those wonders on Wonderopolis. So hurricane names, eye of the hurricane, what is a hurricane? Then there is the empower piece. So this is where I connected her right now to something that I needed her to learn. So I asked her to look at the weather here in our area and the wind speed, and then to do some math there as far as hurricane wind speed and our wind speed. And then I included an enrichment piece and a help grid as well. So just so you can kind of see what that looks like. But gosh, you could set that same thing up without doing a big, thick packet. You could fit all of that on one page, right? You could help that make sense in one easy, really kind of maybe an infographic, or just a really setting it up in a way that makes sense where it's a one pager, I think is a good idea. Giving them a one pager with these different pieces is going to be much more powerful than giving them a really thick packet that, quite honestly, they're probably going to either complete the night before it's due, or they're going to be really stressed trying to get it complete. And I don't think that we need to encourage any more stress in their lives than already exists currently. There was a teacher this year, I know we're not talking technology, but I do want to show you this, not this year, this week, that actually set up the 3 E's. She teaches in Scotland, and she set up the 3 E's in Wakelet, which I think is a great idea as well. So if you do, or if you are using technology, I wanted to make sure that I shared that, because those are all added to the website and you can access that really easily. And I'll make sure that I put that in the comments below. So that being said, that website is a really great resource for you. And again, I'll put it in the comments so that you can access it. I'm going to actually do that now. Lots of great ideas there. And remember, they don't all have to be, it doesn't all have to be techie. I mean, you could create this. So I actually have some examples to show you of what this might look like if you don't use technology to set it up. Let me get back to my slide. Here we go. Okay, so you can see over here on the side, I have a couple of different ways. So you could, if you helped your students really understand what this might look like, when you give them the engage, experience, and empower piece, you could give them something like this to document their learning on. And if you want a copy of this, I'm happy to send it to you. Just email me and tell me you want it. If you have students who are able to write, they could document their learning on this page. If you have students who are able to draw, they could draw their learning here. But that way you're still using those same 3 pieces. You're being intentional. So really your packet, or whatever it is that you're sending home, could be made up of your 3 things. So engage, experience, empower, and maybe you have a one-sheeter for each one, right? Here's your page for engage. Here's your page for experience. Here's your page for empower. And then they get this page to really document their learning on. I think that makes sense for your students who don't have access to technology. That would be 4 pages versus sending home a ton of different things. And like I said, you could also set this up as a one pager. So I'll work on an example of that to put in the website. I'll take Katie's and try to recreate it in a way where we don't use technology. I'm always up for a challenge. But I think if you want, again, if you want access to those, I just created those really quickly and I will be more than happy to send them. But you can find all of that information about designing those learning experiences with the 3 E's at that website that I dropped into the comments. One of the things that I love about using this model, this 3E model, is this is something I was sharing before this happened. And I always encourage teachers to engage your students as soon as they come into the classroom, design an experience that they're willing to invest in, and empower them to take that learning beyond the walls of the classroom. So it makes sense that we use something like this, because when we go back to school, we'll just be able to carry this on. It'll just be not a weekly experience. It'll be a daily experience instead. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes it makes sense in my head. It doesn't always make sense to everybody else. So I hope that it makes sense for you for sure. All right, that being said, I want to really quickly, before I wrap up, I know that it wasn't a complete hour tonight, but I know that you guys have things to do for sure and lots of things going on. But I just want to make sure that we are honest about the fact that not every kid has access to technology, and we do have to find different ways to do this. So whether your school is handing out packets or you are trying to do all of this digitally, using this model could be an answer for doing both without doing double work. I think that's one thing that we can't ask teachers to do right now. I know that you guys have so much going on, and a lot of you have your own kids at home, right? That's my situation. I have my own kids here and trying to do all of the other stuff, and it's a lot. And I have older kids. So I think about teachers with younger students and trying to make that work. What does that look like? I think that it's really important that we find ways to make it make sense, but it has to be two things. It has to be meaningful, right? And it has to be manageable. And if we can do this in a way that is both meaningful and manageable, I think that's where we're, again, going to get the most bang for our buck. And that's when we're going to see our learners be willing to invest. I was talking to some people today and I said, look, we can think it's as important as, whatever. But if we can't get them to that willingness to invest, then we're in trouble, right? I'm reading story after story of teachers who have, only 40%, 30% of their class who are really doing the work that is being provided online. So thinking about these three pieces, instead of spending our time creating quantity, it's important to really focus on quality right now. What are the things that I can create, make, and design for my students so that they want to invest in the learning, they're making those connections, and they are actually able to do something with it while they're at home? I think it's not a bad idea to sit down and really make a list of the things your kids are doing at home right now. I know they're playing video games. I know they're going outside. I know they're watching movies. And then think about, how can I tie learning to those things, right? Don't always try to push against. Sometimes it's okay to lean into the things that we know that they're doing, and then considering, how can I weave learning into that so that this starts to become really easy for them to make those connections that we want them to make. So again, feel free to access that, check it out, share whatever you want to do. I hope that it's helpful. That makes so much sense to me, to do it that way and to do something like this. I don't know if you guys can, I don't think you can see my cursor. I was pointing to those two kind of sheets where they can document their learning. That is a really great way for your students who do not have access to technology to still be able to do the same type of thing. Because what you don't want to happen is for you to design really cool learning experiences for your students who have access to technology, and your ones that don't have access to technology, for theirs to just be a ton of worksheets and meaningless work. That's not okay. We have to think about equity. We have to think about doing this in a way that makes sense for everybody. That's really, really important. Okay, that was a lot of information in a little amount of time. I'm going to give you guys just a second. If you have any questions, I want to make sure that I answer those, whether it be questions about the model, the 3E model, or just not having access to technology. There may be something specific that you have going on in your district or on your campus. I would love to answer any of those questions, or at least kind of kick it around. I may not have the answer, but may be able to share just a different perspective. My hair, y'all, I need a haircut and I can't go get one. And it is rough right now. All right, I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes and see if you guys put in any questions or comments. This is so much more fun for me when I'm able to interact with you guys, for sure. While I wait for your questions or comments, I do want you to know, remember that I will share this out tomorrow along with the resources. I will put Nancy, I'm so glad to know that the 3E model is helpful. That makes me feel good, because sometimes you put stuff out there and you're like, does this make sense? Is it helpful? So that helps me a lot. So you'll get an email tomorrow with the webinar. It'll be recorded. And look, I'm not fancy. It's just me. I just want to get on here and share practical things. And so sometimes when I share these webinars back out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was a mess. But it just is what it is right now. And so I'll also share the resources. So I'll share those 2 pages that I created in the resources that I send to you, as well as hopefully an example of what this can look like without technology and how you can do that. So, all right, any other questions, any other comments? Okay, well, I'm going to say this. If you have questions or comments and you just don't want to put them in right now for whatever reason, feel free to put those in and I can always communicate with you through the comments. I appreciate you guys being on. I will be announcing next week's topic soon. I'm not announcing it now because I don't know what it is. But I will definitely, Yolanda, I'm so glad it simplifies your life. I hope that it's helpful and that makes my day. So thank you so much. I want you guys to for sure use those resources. If you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. Let me put my contact information up here really quickly. There we go. That is my website, andymcnair.com, Twitter handle, and email address. I just want to say how much I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know that this is not easy. I think that right now is a really difficult time just as we try to figure this out and make sense of it all. But gosh, what an opportunity we have for our students to make connections and for us to really move the needle forward as far as education goes and the things that we are asking our students to do, as right now they've been kind of thrown into the driver's seat of their own learning. So all of that being said, I just appreciate you guys so much. I absolutely love the Meaningful Mess community and just your willingness to invest and connect each week as we kind of go through this. So thank you so much. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out. I would love to support and help in any way that I can. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Get some rest and have a great week.